Today on the Rise of the Challenge podcast.
Think sustainability. Okay, build systems to cultivate practices, no matter how small these practices it may seem, because momentum is very powerful. All right, this comes down to the habit change model.
Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining today, she's a cancer survivor, health coach, and entrepreneur. Please welcome Yan to the show. How are you doing today, Yan?
Hi, Alex. I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited and grateful to be here today.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what did you like doing growing up?
So I am from Singapore, all the way on the other side of the world. Singapore, we say we are at 1 degree north of equator, sunny island, city-state. And currently right now, I am a integrative women's health coach, specifically, serving the long-term cancer survivors, female above 30. I'm also a chi movement teacher. I also blend with some energy healing practitioner and really a serial entrepreneur as well.
Growing up in
many hats.
Growing up in Singapore, what did you enjoy doing? What are like the known things that kids growing up there do?
Oh, wow. Such a great question because, Singapore is a small country and full of we have how do I say, we have influences from our British colonial. So a lot of, I would say it's typical, like a typical city, like a city area, people go shopping and definitely actually a lot of studying. In Singapore, we do there's a lot of studying, tuition. But that being said, because the country is small, I always like to describe Singapore as a land of man-made possibility. If you have time, you can Google and you can see things like, we don't have 4 seasons, but we have things like the Snow City, which is basically fake snow, And then we have, right now we have, Gardens by the Bay, something that I'm so proud of, so beautiful. You have all these like little mountains or, like little forests as well. So yeah, growing up, there's a lot of starting to do. There's a lot of tuition, a lot of personal development, skills development, but it's also, it really depends on the environment that you grow up, right? If your family is very active, then you'll probably do a lot of outdoor activities, beach, because we're just surrounded by waters. And oh yes, another thing, Singapore, it's a foodie nation. We are like, yeah, we have a lot of we are a melting pot of a fusion of different kinds of cuisines. And because Singapore is a multi-racial society, we have 4 main races. So a lot of our language, our lingua franca, the way how we speak, the type of foods that we have, they're all very, we use the word rojak, mixed. Yeah. So that's kind of like my experience growing up in Singapore.
Were you someone that preferred the outdoors kind of lifestyle or activities, or did you enjoy the studying aspect and learning as much as you can?
Right. This is wow. I laugh because I grew up not being super active, but that is because I didn't have a very strong health or immune system growing up. So, my parents, my grandmother sort of like sheltered me from being active, because if I start getting active, then a lot of symptoms flare up when I was young. So I think that shaped my childhood being very much sedentary, in the sense that I was just doing a lot of studying and reading and, immerse myself in the world of books. And at the time I was crazy about astronomy, like all the planets in the space, stuff like that. But then, the turning point came around 15, 16, when all of a sudden my lung immunity especially got super strong. And then I discovered about movement, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize that I could move this way, and I didn't have all the side effects from moving too much, like persistent cough or skin allergies and stuff like that. And then one thing led to another. I think by the time I reached 18, I was probably, on the outside, I probably looked like like super fit and super adventurous. So in many ways, I think I'm a late bloomer when it comes to like outdoor activity. Now, for me right now, I definitely prefer being more outdoor. Yeah, being more outdoors. Yes, I like nature a lot. I love it. I live by the beach anyway.
Having those medical things, did it kind of hurt like maybe self-confidence in a way, or did you not feel like yourself growing up,
Mm.
like with your lungs and all that?
Yeah, I would say growing up, I didn't feel any negative impact on me until I would say probably when when you're in school, it's very social,
Yeah.
right? You see other kids. I grew up in a same-sex school for 10 years before, I went to a co-ed school. So I think growing up, yeah, because of the social aspect, you're sort of unknowingly you compare yourself like, hey, why is it that this girl can do that, this girl is this girl is that, and
Mhm.
then you start to unconsciously, I mean, you're young at that time and no one really taught me a lot of things, and then you start to wonder like, I wish I could do that. Why can't I do that the way how they do it?
Yeah.
And then you start to I mean, yeah, and then at one point I was labeled, considered overweight by by the BMI standard, which honestly I don't think, I mean, I may be on a borderline overweight, but I'm not like obese, overweight, just like how you see in the States. And being in the same-sex school, it definitely affected my it definitely affected my self-esteem a lot, because what happened was at that time there's this scheme called the TAF Club, TAF,
Mhm.
which means trim and fit. Because I was overweight, I was in this TAF Club for like 2 to 3 years. And what they do is that during our 40-minute recess, all right, we can't eat during canteen. I mean, during the recess time, instead we have to do skipping exercise. But the thing is that in my school at that time, they chose the venue, all right, for people in the TAF Club, right? They chose it right in front of the canteen where all the other girls, right, they're eating, which means that they can actually see who are in the TAF Club. So you can imagine the kind of like self-esteem that it had on people, on girls, in the TAF Club. I didn't know at that time this thing called fat shaming. I think around 2016, someone actually wrote about fat shaming things. So I think that grew up definitely affected my self-worth, my self-esteem, the way how I look at myself as well. And it doesn't help that tough. If you reverse it, it's spelled FAT.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you
yeah.
even think about with the States, that is just, you see that all the time. And especially in a time where social media, pictures online nowadays, people commenting behind a computer screen, it's hard for people to have that confidence without either editing a photo or not being their true authentic self. They're not being who they are. And it's almost like people wish that they were going back in time where people didn't have social media and they can't say those things and let people be who they are. And you talked about like the BMI index. And I think a lot of people look at that and they're like, oh, I'm on this side. This thing tells me I'm maybe overweight and stuff. And then they go crazy with their diets and stuff. And it becomes even more deadly. So I think everyone in this world can relate to those kind of struggles if they have gone through those things.
Yeah, I think you raised a really, really good point, Alex. I mean, during my time, well, listeners, I'm approaching 40, so I'm talking about 20 years ago, where social media is, I don't think social media was even really
No.
born. Maybe Facebook, maybe like Facebook in the early days, but during that time, nobody really used social media. So, and right now with, with the rampage of social media, I think the impact, the emotional and the mental impact on on external on our externals and taking care of our really like really taking our health has taken has blown out of proportion, and I think it also gave a warped sense about what health really means, all right, right now compared to 20 years ago. I mean, 20 years ago I felt it. I mean, 20, like I said, when I first was in TAF Club, I didn't feel that much, except for the bit that shame whereby, oh my god, I need to I need to exercise in front of the whole school. Like people would know, like, oh my gosh, you're in a tough club, which affected my self-esteem because later on, as I get, when I move into my 20s, right, I then, started to, I started doing weight training at the gym, and one thing lead to another. And at one point I was like, you know what, I want to see if I want to sort of challenge as well as see if I can, um, look like the women on magazine covers. And
Hmm.
I did that, and I learned a lot, and I realized that, oh my gosh, there's so much, uh I call it myths and the ugly truth behind the scenes as well. And I noticed, all of this is being talked about, over the last couple of years. So yeah, my journey, in terms of just that aspect, it's quite a bit. And we have not even talked about my cancer journey. So
Sometimes
yeah.
when we're growing up, we're asked that fun question, what do we want as a dream job? What was that dream job for you as you were growing up?
Okay. I will have to admit that it changed a lot. My first dream job was to be a astronaut, something
Okay.
in the States. All right. And then I realized that, okay, in Singapore, that's not quite an option. And then I said, all right, let's be a pilot. I need to fly. And then I realized that, okay, I've been myopic. I have been wearing glasses since I was 3. And then I realized that's also out. Okay. And then I said, all right, let's be a air traffic, what could I first, anyway, anything to do with aviation. I was going down that road. And I was like, okay, I can't even be an air stewardess because I'm only 5'1". And I was like, okay, I can't be in aviation. And then I thought of then becoming, I think my last option was, oh yes, something along the line of nutrition. And that led me, but at that time there was no like a major degree in nutrition in Singapore. And the
Mhm.
next closest thing I could find was food science and technology. I was very passionate about, wanting to have a very meaningful and purposeful career revolving around using food as a way to heal
Mhm.
ourselves, not just individually, but as well as relational. Because I grew up in a generational household, and being a typical Asian Chinese family, we have lots of food. And I don't know why I have this innate ability in me to observe patterns. And I noticed that, wow, food is so intimate in our lives, we don't realize. Like when we meet up with somebody, it's always about food, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just so intimate to us. And through my years, I noticed that our health, right, our health status depends on our social as well as what we eat, right? So
Yeah.
I really wanted to move more into the whole nutrition aspect of things. Yeah.
Going to school, did you go to college and what path did you take, or did you go right into the workforce?
Right. So very typical in Singapore is very typical. So we moved we so because we are, part we are, how do I say, we are product from the British colony, right? So we don't we our here we call our colleges university,
Mhm.
right? And then before universities, it was that we call it junior college, which is 17, 18 years old. And I think that in the US is what's that? 17, 18.
17 to 18 would be last year of high school for most people.
Right. You see, last year of high school. And then yeah, and then I began my university, my degree program when I was 19, which I think in the States it's called college.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's that.
What path were you going? Like, did you have a set field? Like, did you kind of know like nutrition was the route that you wanted to go? Was it kind of
Mm,
aviation, those things?
mm,
What
mm,
was that path for you?
mm. Right. So, I didn't set out to plan a lot of things. I mean, I remembered I was faced with a dilemma like after 18, after I got my A levels, because I did triple science. And my teacher at that time said that, Yan, you could try, for medical school. She felt that I mean, not just my grades supported that, but she felt that in terms of my soft skills, like character wise, she felt that I could go for medical school. But I didn't opt for medical school because I was attached to a medical student during my last year of high school. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot of work. I don't think I want to do that. It's a lot of work, guys, to study medicine. Yeah, so I didn't do that. And then like I said, then I opted for food science and technology in university because I thought that would be the next closest thing to nutrition. However, life took me on a different path because in college I started a relationship with someone who is 10 years older than me. I actually met him when I was doing a holiday job while waiting to enter college.
Mhm.
And yeah, I was dating someone who is 10 years older than I am, and I think that relationship changed my university years or my college days. So I started being, I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because I didn't start it out wanting to do business, but because hanging out with him and he was thinking a lot about financial freedom life, he was teaching me a lot about making money out from the internet. That was like 2000 and that was 2003. So we're talking about really the early, I mean, almost slightly after the early dot-com days,
Mhm.
right? Where you have to spend thousands of dollars just to get an online store up, compared to now a couple of $100. You can even do it on your own. It's much easier. Yeah, so during that for 3-4 years in university days, I got bored with college study. I managed to scrape by and was focusing a lot about creating multiple streams of income online. So I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. Yeah, and then one thing led to another. That's when I started my first e-commerce business. Yeah, during my university days or college days.
As you talked about the big transitions in your life, one big part of your story is your cancer journey that you went on. Talk
Mm.
about the lead up to that diagnosis and how were you feeling and what were you going through?
Right. So my cancer did not came as a surprise for me. Um, in fact, okay, so remember early on I shared that growing up I had not a very strong childhood immunity,
Mhm.
right? And then through a lot of care from my grandparent, from my grandmother, and using holistic methods, mainly TCM with a little bit of Western approach, but mostly the TCM approach, I got really, really strong. My immunity, my lung immunity got really strong. And that's when I discovered about, movement, about exercising, about rhythm, about nature and all that stuff. And then I met my boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend. And then we started and then we started an online business. I was, in the rush state, really wanted to achieve as much as I can. And then that relationship became rather abusive, semi-abusive towards the end of, especially the last 2 years of the relationship. It could be a mix of, I was young and he was stressed. I don't know, or that just a lot of things, like there's emotions, there's business. Sometimes all the boundaries get so blurred up as well. And I wasn't, yeah, like I said, I was still new, I was young, and adding on to that, he was someone who is not of my race. So there's a lot of complexity as well, adding on to that. So yeah, so the relationship turned rather abusive, and then we often were quarreling. There was a lot of verbal abuse, and then at one point he started to hit me after we quarreled, and that added further emotional stress in terms of shame and guilt. Shame because I didn't want to come home looking like terrible. Guilt because I felt at that time, I felt guilty that I turned him into like someone that he's not. He clearly wasn't like that when I first met him, right? And then when he turned, I felt like I triggered something in him, especially when he started threatening, wanting to kill himself, you know. And then I remembered at that time, I kept saying that at the rate that we are quarreling, I won't be surprised that I will get sick. I kept saying it again and again and again.
Mhm.
And then finally, we were going through the big breakup and patchback phase, and then finally, at the turn of a new year, I was like, you know what? I don't think this is doing well for us at all. So we did a clean breakup, and then like most young girls after they break up, see what did they do? They go to the gym, they do exercise, they want to get their esteem back, something back. And yeah, I did that. And I was actually preparing for women's first triathlon. And I would say on externally, I was eating clean, clean. Clean means like no processed food, just, yeah, no processed food, no overload of sugar and stuff like that. And I was exercising relatively, I was active, on external, I look good, right? And then 10 months later, yeah, I found out that I had my cancer, stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. So when I found out I had cancer, I was like I said, I was not surprised because remember, I was like, holy crap, did I just curse myself? Because, for almost 1.5 years, I kept saying at the rate that we are quarreling, I won't be surprised I will get really, really sick. I remember asking the doctor, okay, are you sure? I said, yeah, pretty sure. All right. And yeah, I wasn't like scared. I was like, yeah, I really, really had that, you know, that, that, that wake up call. It's like, hey, crap, I think I just cursed myself. There's power in words. Jeez. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Like, holy crap. And no one in my family had cancer before. So yeah, and I really thought that cancer was a big flu bug for me, even to this day. Yeah. So that's how I found out I had cancer.
How long did the cancer story last? Did you kind of start feeling worse over time, or were you doing like medicines and treatment that was helping you
Wow.
kind of not have
Wow.
those side effects?
Well, I love this question. I really, really love this question, Alex, because it's something that I keep thinking about actually in the the first 10 years after my cancer.
Hmm.
You know, um, how do I say? Like, I definitely have my moments of, I call it existential crisis, identity crisis. At least that's for me. All I can say is that from what I know, from what I heard, and from what I read as well, from what I experienced, every cancer story is very different as
Yes.
well. And especially right now, because like I said, social media tends to sensationalize everything. At that time, during my time, social media was not great. I don't have the luxury. Okay, I won't say luxury. I don't have the whole, like documented on my Instagram with videos, with reels, and
Yeah.
photos and stuff like that. So even if you want to talk about it on social media, it's very interesting for me because I'm like, I have all the photos to show, but it's okay. It's my life story. It's testament of it. That's why I'm doing podcasts. Yeah. So that when you ask that question about how was it like for me, I was like, it's the 6 months of me doing the tests, the scans, and going through just chemotherapy. I did just intensive chemotherapy, by the way. Just the chemotherapy alone, it wasn't much. It wasn't as bad as what I saw or what we know in movies.
Yeah.
Like I thought that I would be like, oh, frail and like dying on bed, that kind of stuff. But it wasn't. I think in most part, yes, definitely some fatigue because you're just constantly pumping yourself, you know, um, drugs.
Hmm.
And but some of the other patients that I met in the hospital actually said to me that perhaps also because you are young, and I really think there is merit to it because when you're young, your body is able to somehow sustain the effects
Hmm.
better. It's like you're on a clean slate. You know what I mean? Yeah, and yeah, so going in and out of the hospital, just I think I had a very early head start in terms of looking at life in terms of from a very deep meaning point of view because I was just sitting there whenever I received my chemo drugs, just sitting there looking at other cancer patients they are really fighting for their life, which means to say that some of their cancers are you know they have been in and out of the hospital for years trying to stay alive. For me, I'm fortunate in a way that my type of cancer, it's considered very treatable,
Hmm.
and I don't have any financial burden at the time because everything can be paid for through my medical insurance, as well as heavily subsidized by the government, right? And my parents are in a good financial situation, doesn't require a lot as well. So that's that. So yeah, so just going in our hospital, just looking at how other people, so-called, fighting for their lives, but they are so resilient. They're so positive. I mean, yeah, I was like, Yan, you're really given a second lease of life just being in the hospital, watching these people. I remember there's this lady who is so skinny and so thin, and they were telling me that, yeah, she's on her end stage. But boy, she is so spirited. I mean, really, she's so spirited. If people are complaining about life, look at some of these spirited, really spirited fighter. So yeah, but I would say the real struggle for me with cancer would actually be life after cancer. For me, it was really the life after cancer. Things like I said, existential crisis, what to do next. And to a certain extent, I do admit that at least for those first 10 years, I do admit that sometimes I will wonder, like, will I get a relapse? And if I get a relapse, what am I going to do? Because, the thing with the insurance model is that when you have cancer, insurance can't, pay you again, and insurance can't cover you again. So that's that as well. And some other, long-term physical impacts as well. So that's pretty much that, it's always alive after cancer. That's where I'm at right now.
Looking at
15 years.
looking at the whole journey, if you could describe your kind of energy, your attitude towards how you overcame it in one word, how would you describe yourself?
Good question. I facilitate that energy between resilience and, okay, in terms of imagery, I think I sort of look at myself like a phoenix, like a mythical phoenix. Like I keep going through deep transformations, and then I rise up again, and then whatever comes at me, and then I get burned down to ashes. It's not easy, right? And then you rise up again. But at the same time, there's a lot of hope. So I also associate myself with hummingbirds. I love hummingbirds. And then I also associate myself with the orcas, the killer whales. I think they are, yeah, I think they're some of the most misunderstood predators, right? Apex, they're the apex, and probably also influenced by the show Always Free Willy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like that in terms of animals. And in terms of characters, I always found myself like I'm a mix between one of Charlie Angel's, particularly Lucy Liu, since she's Asian, a mix between like one of the Charlie Angels mixed with Alice from what's that show? Resident Evil, and yeah, and what's her name? What's her name? The Tomb Raider. What's the lady's name?
Laura Croft.
Yes, and Lara Croft. Like I kind of see myself a mix between all these three. Yeah. I don't know what word is it. Just looking, still finding that word. If you have one right now, you can just suggest to me.
No, but I feel like that is so important that you are connecting your journey with a kind of the characteristics that those individuals or that animal, the characters kind of take on within their show or how they live their life. Because I love that you referenced the phoenix, because that is so true that we're all sometimes falling to the ground below and rising up and kind of giving yourself not like a fresh start, but it's a new beginning to start a new chapter, and you're able to go live your life how you want without having those challenges that you're facing, but you're able to take exactly what you learned from going through it and help you grow even more today.
Yeah. Well put it. Yes, Alex, exactly. Oh, I just realized, oh yes, your logo, it's a
Yeah.
phoenix.
Yep.
It's totally a phoenix. Yeah, I love the way how you describe it. Yeah, I have it in my images as well in my head. And it brings me also to the point about the word pivot.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how, looking back, so to speak, I didn't realize how I've been through, twists and turns, ups and downs, and pivots and spirals. And, I don't think I will have it another way, right? And that's the thing, right, guys, or, ladies, if you want to be better, I'm pretty sure everyone wants to live a better life, whatever better means for them. And to live better means to change,
Yeah.
right? You either change for the better or you change for the worse. But either way, it's the allowing, right? Creating the space, allowing yourself to embrace the change, right? And to allow yourself to go through that transformation, that transmutation, that metamorphosis, and come to, yeah, just sort of like allowing that practice, that process to happen, which is why right now in, after 15, 16 years being cancer free, right, I realized that the key to, living just not just about cancer free, living just disease free, living just, the best version of life for the rest of your life, it's really cultivation. I call it cultivating practices, particularly the resilient practices, so
Yeah.
that you can ride through the seasons of lives, whether is it on the body aspect or on the external aspect, like the macro aspect of things. Yeah, and then it took me a while, and I'm still cultivating it. It's an ongoing process, right? It's like nurture. It's like, it's like growing your seeds from seeds to trees, right? It's a process, right? And then when the trees or the flowers, before they die, they always, will have some uh, legacy left behind so that new seeds would grow. And yeah, that's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like how I associate it.
So, with your journey that you have been on, you talked about at the beginning about the big impact and mission that you have with helping other individuals through health coach, being a health coach. What is the big mission you are trying to do to help these other individuals and their journey that they're going on?
I would want to guide them into taking charge of their own health through cultivating practices, making them realize also that there is a powerful healing or healer within us, healing medicine. All right, to connect with their heart, coming back to the true self-love, not the selfish self-love, but the selfless self-love. Because it's only through the selfless self-love, right, that your health resiliency, or AKA your immunity, gets a really strong boost.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? It's really through cultivation, cultivating right practices, or more on the behavior change. So in that way, they get to live life that is full of vitality, that is full of joy, not just happiness, but joy, that is full of what I call true so-called freedom. Okay, I truly believe that freedom is also something that you, how do I say, it's a responsibility. A lot of people talk about, I want to have freedom, but do you realize that to have freedom, you need to, or at least that's my personal take, in order to have freedom in your life, it comes with responsibility, not just yeah, not just being a so-called a leash to somebody. It's that sense of little ownership as well. So that's like one of the biggest message, or rather, at least as of now, my sole message is, coming back to the connection with our heart through self-love, cultivating selfless self-love through, yeah, cultivating practices so as to ignite that powerful healing within us. Because from a famous quote, not a famous quote, but a quote from a doctor that I'm currently training my Qigong, medical Qigong with, he said this: when each person takes on the job of taking care of themselves, the huge job of taking care of everyone is already done. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? Then there's less, how do I say, there's less burden on the global healthcare system. There is more joy with everyone, right? And then prevention is always better than cure as well. There will be a shift energetically. I know that, in the healthcare, in the pharmaceutical industry right now, they don't want to talk about this so much because they are how do I say, they are fearful that there's no money to be made. But
Mhm.
that's the thing. You don't have to worry about that,
Yeah.
right? When people take the job of taking care of themselves, there will be positive abundance everywhere.
Mhm.
You're not, I would say, you're not wasting so-called resources, the sustainable change. I mean, we can look around what's happening in the world right now. A lot of the systems are breaking down. It's obvious that, the more you try to live in a fear base or that kind of like controlled environment, it's not sustainable. It's not the way how the nature works. So yeah, that's really, one of my biggest soul mission for now at this phase. Why I say for now is because, I always embrace evolution, right? That's my
Mhm.
soul, but definitely cultivating that, uh, I call it that selfless self-love.
Something we like to ask all of our guests is our listeners like to really know a little bit more about our guests. What is
Mm.
something that you enjoy nowadays that maybe people don't know you like to do?
Mm, mm. Well, it's it's such a stark difference from how I am 10 years ago. Right now, I really enjoy learning how to what I call flow.
Mhm.
Flow doesn't mean weak feminine flow, more like um yeah, just roll with the punches or roll with the waves, you know. And that's why now I'm really loving Qigong more, right? I love Qigong more because I can roll with it, and it really helps with my mental and my emotional aspect. It gives me a lot. It's funny, the more so this is another thing that I'm actually learning as well, or rather that I enjoy doing more right now, is learning to slow down, to still my way, STILL, to slow down and then eventually still my way into a rest, digest, manifest state. The moment I come into the present moment, all of a sudden I realize I have so much time. I have a lot of health and vitality. I feel good, and I feel like I'm ready to take on, so-called the world, right? Yeah. So that's a lot of that's that. I really like to, move to be in nature, doing a lot of outdoor stuff or nature stuff. Like right now, I'm learning how to do a little bit of herb growing at home. Love cooking as well. I love to cook my own food, prepare my own food. I also like to I'm actually also now deep into reading a little bit about human design, which it's a part spiritual, part psychology as well. Yeah. And from time to time, I definitely like also doing content creation right now, learning. That's on the business aspect of things. Also love to spend time with my nieces. I mean, I love
Oh.
kids. They one of the most, I mean, they are so genuine, right? They bring such authentic, playful spirit. And it always reminds me, there's always a beautiful inner child within us. Inner child doesn't mean childish, but more like that authentic self, that playful
Mhm.
self, right? When we look at children, notice how they don't have, like, they just say what they mean. There's no filter. And that aspect of being a child is amazing. It's funny that, just adults, we as we get older, we try to put on so many masks, and it's so heavy for us to carry, right? Yeah, so yeah. And then now, I don't know, perhaps I want to explore more of a little bit into a bit of sketching, coloring, and perhaps some kind of maybe playing with my guitar, my sounds. Yeah.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Right. So, three things. Number one, think sustainability. Okay, build systems to cultivate practices, no matter how small these practices it may seem, because momentum is very powerful. All right, this comes down to the habit change model. All right, so think sustainability. So whatever systems you're building up bit by bit, think about how long, what is the long term, how long it can last for you. all right? Because we don't want to like start, stop, just like dieting the whole, but I don't like the word diet, but you get what I mean, the whole dieting. All right, so that's one thing, sustainability. Two, movement. Okay, I really feel that movement matters. Our body is designed to move. Even if you have no limbs, right? The body is still designed to move. There's some kind of movement, even internally. Even breathing is a kind of movement. It's just that you don't see it the way how we typically see. All right. Movement matters. Learn. So under the umbrella of movement matters, very important as well. Learn to move right. In inverted commas, learn to move right through the seasons of life, whether it's on the internal season or on the external season. So what I mean by that is, just because someone is doing, let's say, HIIT, and they see results, it does not mean that, perhaps it does not necessarily mean that that movement is right for you at this time of your life stage. For example, I used to be a competitive figure athlete. I was doing a lot of weight training. All right, that worked for me at that time. Right now, maybe it's not suitable for me, and we will know it. We will know when a movement is right or not.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, this is one of the strongest value and pillars that I focus on in my coaching program. And the last one is, I want to talk about stillness. So I mentioned about stillness. Okay. Stillness is the way to rise to challenge with breathing. There's so much breath work. All right. With the breath, you get the heart-mind connection. Very, very, very powerful to rise to challenge, whatever that you want. All right. These are all keys to, rising above challenge. All right. To whether is it for freedom, for health, for abundance, for love. All right. Yeah. So still down so that we can go further, and rest. Allow yourself to rest. Rest is productive as well. So 3 things: sustainability, movement matters, move right, and stillness, breath, heart-mind connection.
Well, Yan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thank you so much, Alex. So listeners, if you would like to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram at The Real Yan Huang. So over my Instagram, I actually share some behind of the scenes journey of myself as a cancer survivor, as well as a role model in terms of cultivating my health practices here in Singapore as an Asian Chinese. Sometimes you may also get some behind the scenes show of I call it my not so crazy rich Asian family as well. And most of all as well, I also would love to invite listeners to join my wait list of my R4CS program. I will share these notes with Alex as well. All right. And then you can, just join me on this R4CS group program. It's a beta program. I'll probably be launching around, 3rd or 4th quarter of this year. I have no specific dates yet. I just want to, flow. Yeah. So it's all about cultivating, these practices as well. All right. So come say hello to me, and then all the links are there as well.